Yes, you are automatically muted as this is a webinar. So just know that you, hopefully you can hear me right now. You are on mute though. This webinar is being recorded and we will be sending you a recording of the webinar. And we have a lot of content to cover today. So we are going to go ahead and get started. Welcome, everybody. Thank you for joining us for Why a Business Plan is Critical and How to Create It with Sandy Eames and Jerry Barron. For today's webinar, you are in listen-only mode, meaning that your audio is on mute. We recommend that you maximize your Zoom window for an optimal experience. We will have 3 breaks for Q&A, so submit questions at any time via the Q&A feature at the bottom of your Zoom window. Again, the Q&A feature at the bottom of your Zoom window. The session is being recorded and we will send you the recording following the webinar. It will go out tomorrow. With that, let me turn things over to Tim Cantato to introduce himself. Tim.
Thank you, Kendra. Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to the inaugural webinar for Spectrum Business Insights, Ideas to Empower Today's Business Owners. The webinar is entitled Why a Business Plan is Critical and How to Create It. My name is Tim Cantato, and while I'm not the presenter of this webinar, I have been a certified SCORE mentor for 5.5 years. And I would like to take this opportunity to tell you a little bit about the SCORE Association. Sometimes known as the Advisors to America's Small Business, SCORE is a nonprofit association comprised of over 10,000 volunteer business counselors in over 325 chapters throughout the United States and its territories. In existence for 55 plus years, SCORE members are trained to serve as counselors and members to aspiring entrepreneurs and business owners. SCORE chapters offer mentoring services, workshops, and webinars similar to the one you are about to see. Advisory board services for more established businesses, business owner roundtables, which serve as peer networking groups for entrepreneurs, and information services like templates and instruction booklets through their website. SCORE mentors are experienced business executives with specialties and expertise in a variety of disciplines like marketing, finance, accounting, and many other fields. They are available to help businesses in all stages of a business's development, whether it be at pre-startup, startup, or even ongoing concerns. And as such, SCORE mentors are trained and encouraged to develop ongoing relationships with their clients, meaning more than one-time meetings, but hopefully series of follow-up sessions to help promote success. So, as you look through this, you may be asking yourselves, so how do I avail myself of this free help offered by SCORE? Well, for the first thing, you can request a mentor by going to www.score.org and click Find a Mentor. Then you can enter your zip code, fill out a mentor request form, and a mentor will reach out to you to schedule a session. Really, it's as easy as 1, 2, 3. Now, the New York City chapter of SCORE is pleased to partner with Spectrum Business to bring you this series of training webinars. I hope that you'll register, sign up, and attend each of the webinars that speak to your individual needs. I myself will be presenting 2 of them, one on May 24th and June 28th, and I hope to see you there. And we'd certainly like to thank Spectrum Business for underwriting this series of webinars. And in that vein, I'd like to welcome Jennifer Ingram, the Vice President of Marketing for Small and Medium Businesses, to say a few words. Jennifer?
So Tim, thank you very much for the introduction. My name is Jennifer Ingram. I hope everyone can hear me. I'm the Vice President of Marketing with Spectrum Business. And as you may know, we provide internet, voice, TV, and mobile solutions to small businesses across 41 states. We are really pleased to be sponsoring today's workshop, and we're really pleased to be partnering with SCORE, because at the end of the day, Spectrum Business and SCORE share the same goal. We want to help small businesses thrive. We know that small businesses are the backbone of the country's economy and really play a critical role in our communities. And frankly, in many ways, small businesses are the glue that holds the community together. I know that's true for the community that I live in. And that's why we're sponsoring this workshop series, which is brought to you by SCORE. It's really important that we help small businesses to get the support that they need to start their business, grow their business, and run their business successfully. This is really our commitment to businesses and to serving the communities where we operate. So on behalf of the entire team at Spectrum Business, I'd like to thank you for attending today's session, and I really hope that you find the session helpful. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Jennifer, and thanks so much, Tim. With that, we just want to say enjoy your webinar, and I will now turn things over to Sandy Eames to introduce himself. Sandy.
All right. Let me just get the screen share. Okay. Well, greetings, everybody. Welcome to our webinar. Thank you to Spectrum, by the way, for their help and support in sponsoring this. My own background is, look, I spent 35, 40 years in the medical electronics and biotechnology space. But really my relevant experience now is 11 years as a SCORE mentor. And I've probably worked with several thousand clients over the years. And it's been an amazing experience. And I truly echo Jennifer's comments, which were that, you know, the small businesses are the backbone of our economy. So really what we're going to try and do today is to look, you know, starting in a small business or pivoting your business or bringing out a new product or service is a bit like climbing a big hill. And really what we're going to try and do today is to help you cut some steps into that hill so you can take a step, look back, review where you've gone. Hopefully you'll find yourselves a mentor to work with, particularly with SCORE, and then you can proceed to the next step. And that makes it, you know, a manageable process to get there. But before I start, let me just give you two stories. I believe in using examples as part of my my teaching, and so let me just give you two stories that I heard about, two small business stories. So one I heard about was he was a mechanic with one of the large companies down in Florida. He got laid off, but his hobby was diving in the ocean, diving on wrecks and so on. And anyway, so one day he decided to dive somewhere else. And I know you're going to ask me the question, why? And I don't know the answer to this question. But he chose to dive under the waters of a pond on a golf course. And what he found was the bottom of the pond was not black with weeds and so on, but it was actually white with golf balls. So what he did, he saw an opportunity. And what he did was he went home, he got a large sack, came back and filled that sack with several thousand balls and went over to the pro shop and sold those balls. And that day he was in business. Now, the irony is he did not have a business plan. He just went out and got his business going. And then the story goes on from there. So what he did was he realized there was money in this. The other thing he noticed was that some balls were in good condition and some were in bad condition. So what he did was he started bringing back the balls. So he had this suburban home with a washer dryer in his garage, and he started actually washing the balls, and he started grading them into some that had been hit once, were actually in top quality. There was a medium grade where they'd been hit several times, but were still valuable. And then there were those which were cut up and really only good for one last hit off a stern of a cruise ship. So he started washing them in his washer dryers. And then he started getting complaints from his neighbors about, you know, the noise that's coming out. So how did he fix it? Well, he hires his neighbors into his growing business. And then he started getting competition, although he'd worked out deals, exclusive deals with the golf courses to recover balls from their ponds. He started getting competition. So how did he fight that off? Well, he took those little 1-cent balls, good for one last hit, you know, and put them back in the ponds. So his competitors would spend all night mining the ponds and get back $50 worth of balls. Anyway, so he was interviewed on his yacht off Miami somewhere as a success story. And as far as we know, he never wrote a business plan. So you don't have to have a business plan. And the other story I heard about when I joined SCORE, and what it was a restaurant owner. And I think his location was in the Bronx, although it really doesn't matter too much. Anyway, so this person started, he also did not have a business plan. And he started putting together his restaurant. He decided to rent a space which did not have a kitchen. So he had to put in a kitchen. So he put in a brand new kitchen. He brought brand new tables and chairs and everything else. And he got to his day of opening. And then he ran out of cash. And that's when he walked into SCORE. And I happened to know the mentor he saw, because the mentor told me he had tears rolling down the mentor's face when he heard the story, because by this time it was really too late to really help this individual. And what we did was we helped him exit his lease by giving up the improved space. And the frustrating part of this is if he'd done a business plan with cash flow projections, he would have realized he needed more money to actually open the business. And there's a space in Manhattan where there's a whole line of stores that buy used restaurant equipment and recondition it and clean it and then resell it for a much lower price than brand new equipment. So a very viable plan B would have been to buy used equipment and then get the restaurant going, validate the business model, and then 2 years later close the place for a week and an upgrade. So anyway, so you can start a business without a business plan, but it's a little bit more risky. So what are we going to cover today? So one thing we're going to be covering is, why do you need a business plan? So let's talk about this. These things are not a lot. These are things that do take a fair amount of work. So I want to go back to that. Secondly, I want to talk about 10 requirements for success that we often see. Thirdly, I want you to know your business model and your strategy. I want to suggest a business plan format and structure that you can use. And then we'll walk you through a small business example, which is actually a dog walking business, which we've chosen to call Johnny's Walker. It's dog walking with spirit and style. And we want to give you, some of you will be writing a business plan to secure either a loan or to seek investors. And a common one is a loan. So we want to share with you what we've learned about the lender's perspective of your application and what they'd look for in your plan. And lastly, my colleague Jerry will be covering the last 2 points here, actually the last 3, and also walk you through an introduction to doing financial projections. So why do you need a business plan? Well, there's really 3 main reasons, and this is the first. It's really for your own guidance. And it's a roadmap. It helps you think through, and it helps you avoid mistakes, and it outlines all aspects of your business. And it helps you set goals to measure your progress. Once you've set, for example, a sales forecast in your financial projections, now what we can do is, and I'm doing this now with several clients. I meet with them every 3 months to monitor their quarterly progress. And we can then obviously adjust and take action. The second reason for writing a plan is to support potential sources of money. It's the sales document, and it talks about the investment needed, how you'll use that investment, and how you will pay it back and reward investors. And this is needed. These are needed for all 3 options. There's 3 basic ways you can get into business. You can start a new business, you can buy an existing business, or you can buy a franchise. And starting a new business is the most risky, but it gives you the most freedom as to what to do. You can buy an existing business and then adjust it and change it. And generally, you're buying their existing branding. Or you can buy a franchise And a franchise usually is the most capital expensive. It's also the lowest, usually the lowest business risk, because you're taking on an existing and proven business model. But you have to play by the book. You have to do exactly what the franchisor wants you to do. So let's just sort of do a quick poll, first of all. What stage is your business plan? And are you just beginning? Have you done some analysis? Have you got a draft complete, including financial projections? Or if you're not sure, I need a plan.
We've got lots of responses coming in, Sandy, but we're going to give it just a little bit longer.
Okay.
Just a little bit longer, as we've got lots of responses coming in. And once we have most responses, I'll go ahead, close the poll, and share the results.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, I'm going to go ahead and close that poll. And here are the results.
Okay, so we got 58% at the first stage, the just beginning to investigate my plan. And by the way, we see this profile with most of our other webinars on this topic. So 29% have done some analysis, 5% have got a full draft ready, and 8% are not sure if I need a plan. Okay, thank you. That's useful feedback. So let's look at the 10 requirements for success. So the very first one that comes up is industry experience and knowledge. And just as an example here, I remember, one client walking in one day, and she was planning on buying a laundromat in one of the boroughs of New York City in Queens. So my question to her, and my perception of running a laundromat is that it's a nickel and dime business. It's got very tight margins. You really have to know what you're doing. So my question to her was, have you ever run a laundromat? And the answer was no. And I said, okay, this could be a challenge, a problem. And I said, do you know anybody who has run a laundromat? And she said, well, my father ran one in the same area for 30 years. And and my immediate response was, recruit him. He becomes your advisor. And that's one of the solutions if you do not have enough experience in the area you're trying to get into. But this issue comes up a lot. Key is to know what you know and know what you don't know, and have a solution in place when you know what you don't know. And that can often be advisors. Secondly, you heard this issue, sufficient startup money. And that's a key reason for doing a business plan with financial projections. You want to have a clear understanding of your market and customers. You'll probably be bringing on employees, so obviously you'll need to be managing them carefully, and maybe we can talk some more about this later. You want to have the right location for your business, particularly if it's bricks and mortar. And you want to have proper pricing of product or service, and we can talk some more about this later. You want to have a careful attention to competition and a plan to compete successfly. And again, we'll be talking about this more later. Sound budgeting, careful attention to cash flow. Understanding a new business often requires 24/7 attention, 24/7. But guess what? It's your business. You'll hopefully be having fun doing it versus working for someone else. And then lastly, careful management of all assets. So I find I've evolved 6 key questions that I find really help people at the very early stage think through their businesses. And I want to spend a little bit more time in this and the following slides on this. There's 4 strategic questions. Who's your customer? What are you selling? Why are you better? And how will you reach your customer? And then there's 2 financial questions. How will you survive the first year? And how will you make money? So another poll here. Do you have a profile for your ideal customer? Over to you, Kendra.
Yes, we're just giving it a moment as we have lots of responses coming in. And once we have most of the responses, I will go ahead, share the results, which I'm going to do now. And here you go.
Okay, 75% think you have a good idea of their ideal customer. Okay, that's great. Okay, 17% are no, and a few are don't knows. All right, so let's just talk about this first question. Who is your customer? And you may want to consider some very basic questions like geography, ideal customer persona. You know, what goes into that persona? You know, the gender, age, income, interest, maybe ethnic background. And also, this is another common issue. Who is buying? Are you selling through a wholesaler, a distributor, or via retail? And if you are, you need to understand the business model that they have as well. What margins do they want to make on their product? The other issue that comes up is buying on behalf of another. And a classic example there is, let's say, you've got the child of an elderly parent wanting to buy elder care services. So now you actually have two customer groups in that circumstance. You obviously have the person who's going to be cared for, but also the customer group also includes you know, the children of that person. So and again, just go back to this laundromat, you know, self-service, you know, laundromat example that I mentioned earlier. So let's just think about the ideal customer for a self-service laundromat. And I mean, for example, would you place it next to high-rise, you know, 20, 30-story buildings? And well, maybe not, because they're likely to have laundry services in the basement, you know, for residents. What about, you know, upscale townhouses and detached houses and semi-detached houses? How about that? Well, again, probably no, because those customers will probably have their own facilities in their homes. On the other hand, if you had an area where there's a fair amount of transition, it's an area where there's a lot of apartments and transitional people living there, that may be a really good market for it. On the other hand, if you change the business to become a full service laundry now, with tailoring services and dry cleaning, you may well want to circle back to those first two customer groups we mentioned. So again, this is a good thing to talk about with a mentor as to who the customer is. So the second one is, what product or service are you selling? And generally, you want to think about, you know, the function, needs filled, problem solved, the brand name, key features, components, the benefits delivered, you know, their added value, what makes them special, and also costs and margins and units of sale. And again, let me give you an example. A key one here is customer benefits. And you want to be clear on what those are. And so a friend of mine, he had a public relations agency, and this story goes back 30 years. And I hope some of you can remember what a pager was. So here we have Motorola, you know, a company full of engineers who've developed this pager, and now they were trying to roll it out into the marketplace. And the engineers were full of the features, you know, all of the engineering specifications of this system. But what was the key benefits? And what I found anyway, with working with many clients, is the benefit statement often comes from your client, your customer. And what we actually did was they decided to market this thing initially into hospitals, to physicians who are, you know, doctors who would have an office in the hospital, but would be spending most of their time out in the wards or in locations where their office really didn't know where they were. Remember, this is way before cell phones. And so they tried it out on one doctor, and he got a call, had to go see a patient in a ward on a different floor. And what he did was he yelled back at his, you know, his assistant, running out the door with one of these newfangled pages on his belt. And he said, "Beep me when you need me. Beep me when you need me." And in that simple statement of only a few words, it captured the entire benefit of the product. And it was not a technical statement. So my recommendation is, go talk to your customers and say, and ask for benefits, and you can phrase that in different ways. You can say, well, how did my product help you? Or what does it mean to you? What did it do for you? And you'll be surprised at what comes back. Thirdly, why are you better? Such a simple question and such a tough one to answer at times. So you've got to know your competition. You've got to know what your customers' reviews are, their branding, their prices and discounts. And this can come from some secondary research looking at their, for example, their websites, or their, you may be able to find some summaries of their sales volume. So do some, but then also go back out and talk to people and to see what are your customers' reactions to your competitors' products. And why are you better? Well, look, a common reason for a small business to be better is better customer service. I mean, you will probably be answering the phone directly until you built the business up, but you'll be answering the phone personally. And that's so different from calling into either voicemail or, press 1 for this, 2 for that. You may have a better product. You may have faster delivery. If you're a consultant in the service industry, you may have better, your industry knowledge and expertise. And really, please try to avoid lower price. And you do not have the buying power. If you're selling a product, you do not have the buying power that larger competitors will have. So you may not have the lowest, your cost may not be the lowest. So it's a question of finding out a way to get a better price for your product. Then the fourth question is, how will you reach your customer? And really here, this is really your marketing communications plan. So you want to develop your communications plan itself. What is your goal? What are the messages you're going to be using? What's your budget and time frame? And in terms of budget, how much do you want to spend and what return do you expect to get? What is the content, style, and branding, and the mode of communication? Are you going to be using social media? Is your business a business-to-business model, as in a consulting business? And now you're reaching out to people. You may be going to, if you're again consulting, you may want to try and be on a speakers panel at conferences, so you are promoted as an expert in the field. But look, ensure your plan is built to achieve your objectives. And with digital marketing, you can measure a lot of the results. One of the early marketeers, and unfortunately I can't remember his name, but he made up he commented over 100 years ago. He said, "I know 50% of my marketing is wasted. The problem is I don't know which 50%." And now with digital marketing in particular, if you're marketing using those channels, you can measure the results and adjust. This is a topic here, business, prove that your business model works. And I think it's critical that you validate your model for you and your investors. And look, investors are highly unlikely to invest in a concept. They want to see the business model tested. And I enjoy watching Shark Tank. And they generally do not want to invest in a concept. They want to invest in something where the sales exist, but their investment becomes financial fuel along with all their contacts and support to grow the business. So market test your concept and idea with future customers. And you may need to design a minimum viable product along the way. And again, an example here, I was lucky enough to be at New York University's Stern Business School. We used to have an office there for SCORE. And I had time to sit in on a lecture by Steve Blank. And he, along with Eric Rice, I've been talking about and writing books on the lean startup model. And I found this lecture to be pivotal in my thinking and my mentoring of clients. And really what it comes down to is I have one takeaway from that lecture, which is from day one, go out and talk to your customers and get their input. And he mentioned a story of, he had a startup, it was some of his MBA students, and they had this wonderful idea of converting a John Deere grass mowing tractor to be self-steering. And their target market was golf courses, the owners of golf courses. And it was meant to be a labor-saving device. So their tractor could steer around the golf course, following an established track in its memory, and cut the grass, save a lot of labor, and let them cut their cost. And then they had a secondary idea, which was automated weeding of organic farms. Anyway, so the advice was go out and talk to both customers from day one, before you've developed anything. And those interviews proved absolutely pivotal. And what happened was they spoke to the owners of the golf courses, and they came back with a yawn. That's a real danger signal. They came back with a yawn. So what they came across was that the golf course owners had real concerns about what these machines would actually be doing to their valuable greens. And they also found that they didn't believe, they still had to employ gardeners. So there really was no considerable net savings. And the gardeners were obviously, looking after the land and the property. And there was also some concern about these things falling into a pond on the golf course and maybe hit someone recovering golf balls at the same time. Anyway, so they went to the second group, and so they started talking to organic farmers. And what they rapidly discovered that, it's the answer to the question, what on this planet can tell the difference between a carrot and a weed? And of course, that's a trick question, because it's not what, it's who, it's us. And we are expensive. And so what the organic farmers saw was an immediate significant labor saving. They can have a machine go down their rows of carrots and pull out the weeds, leave the carrots. Anyway, so the response back was quite different. The response was, oh, can I be a beta site? Can I be a beta site? That's a really interesting buy signal. Anyway, so the interaction with these customers from day one completely pivoted their business model. And they forgot about the golf courses and they shifted towards weeding of organic farms. And by the way, this business has now gone on. They dropped the automated steering part of it, but they have now got a device which you can tow behind a tractor, which actually scans the row of carrots and the row of weeds, and it zaps the weeds as it goes over them. So I hope that gives you some reason to go out and talk to your customers from day one. I look for this in business plans that I review. If my client has not spoken to the customer, I get really worried because they're in a vacuum, and the issue comes up all the time. So often I've seen the plan significantly change once the voice of the customer is included in the conversation. Anyway, so, and again, this is a really good topic to talk about with a mentor, which is how do I go about proving it? How do I interview people? Where do I find my customers? How do I set up a conversation with them? What do I ask them? How do I go about validating it? I have another client, by the way. She's now expanding an e-commerce based arts prints model. So she designs her own prints, sells them via e-commerce, but a test market was done at craft fairs. And she had a really good experience doing initial sales. So she validated her business model. She established initial customers and then decided to expand it using e-commerce. Another thing you want to think about is the market analysis. It's really a first key step. we've spoken about the local picture, which is talking with your customers and testing your concepts. What are their pain points? That's an interesting thing to understand. What problems you're trying to solve. You also need to know the big picture. The market, is the marketplace growing? You know, are you going into a market segment which is growing or slowly contracting? And obviously you want to try and position yourself in one which is growing and new opportunities are opening up. You need to understand the trends in your industry and obviously what your competition is doing. So let's just talk about some preliminary steps in starting to think about putting together a business plan. And back to some of those steps being carved into the hill that we spoke about earlier. So step one, talk to your customers, get some feedback. Take notes, by the way. When you have a conversation with a potential customer, take notes, write it down, and then you can put those notes in the appendix to the plan. And then you can summarize after you've done, say, 5 or 10 interviews, you can summarize up front the summary of your conversations with your potential customers. Build out your business model. Now, we spoke about some of those earlier questions. One of the things I do with a lot of my clients is I ask them to write the answers to those 4 questions I gave you earlier on just one sheet of paper, 1 sheet, 4 questions in bullet points. And again, I'm constraining the number of words being used intentionally. I want crisp, clear answers. And that sheet can go on into your business plan. You may need to develop product prototypes. It depends on the business you're getting into. You certainly want to test for viability. Does your model work? And maybe your product work as well. And you want to be clear about your market potential. Who's going to buy it? Again, I've seen so many plans where people talk about the global market for female apparel or something. And really what we need to look at is, what is your addressable market? What market segment are you going after, and how big is that? You may need to estimate time needs before the launch, and you may need to do financial projections, particularly if large amounts of capital are involved or work in progress. And you're certainly going to need to do them if you need to borrow money or get investors to join you. So, and a question for you is, do you have the resources and temperament to make this happen? So you're going to be working probably by yourself. You can have mentors and advisors to help you, but you will need to manage your time. So, so it's one of the, rather than being told what to do, you'll need to be organized and have to plan out what you're going to do. So this is a format overview. This is one way to organize a plan. And it really comes down to 3 sections. There's a narrative description of your plan. It describes what you're going to do and how you'll do it. And it's, in my experience, it's best short, concise, and to the point. And I would suggest for most businesses, 3 to 4 pages if you can do it. Our eyes glaze over after about 10 pages. And someone gave me a 64-page business plan the other day. And you honestly, as a reader, you get through 15 pages and then skim the rest. But 3 to 4 pages, short, sharp, and to the point. The second part is a financial plan. This is usually in an Excel spreadsheet, and what it will cost, how you'll pay for it, and how you'll make it profitable. SCORE, by the way, has some excellent templates, which will make sure you know by the end of this webinar where to find them. They're all available for free, and I use them all the time with my clients. And then lastly, the appendix. Now, the opposite is true here. It's best long with lots of detail, because that shows you've done your homework. So here you may want to do a competitive analysis. Here you, for example, part of your competitive analysis could show, you've done a review of your competitors' websites. Look at all the screen grab pictures that I've taken of competitors' websites. And there's 4 key competitors that I have, and look at their branding. You can show that you've looked it over and understood it. Secondly, and I mentioned this earlier, that you could refer to interviews with customers. You may want to put in detailed bios if they are relevant to your starting your business. This is particularly of you. One key thing that investors will be looking for is your relevance in terms of how you are going to be successful in running your business. What is it special about you that makes it possible for you to be successful? So again, a potential outline for you for a business plan. So generally you want a title page, an executive summary, which you write last. And this is, I suggest this to be no more than 1 page. A business description, which is usually a legal description of, how you're going to form it. Is it an LLC, etc. A description of the business model. And here are those 4 questions again. The voice of your customer, how you've been out there and tested and validated your business model. The team and structure, how you are qualified to make this a success. Financial projections.
Thank you, Sandy. It's time to take a few questions.
Okay.
The first question is, how do I best present my business plan and how long should it be?
Yeah, this is a good question because it's also along the line of how long is a piece of string. Look, if you are, let's just take a digital marketing consulting business as an example. So you're thinking through starting a business. You're an expert in digital marketing, website design, etc., and you want to build out your own digital marketing business. So I think my first question to you as a mentor would be, where do you see yourself going after 3 years? Do you see yourself remaining as a solo consultant, just you, or are you planning to build this out and have a team of, say, 6 full-time employees and 4 part-time people by the end of 3 years? Because that will be quite a different business plan. So when you are a solo player, it may be that your business plan needs to explain clearly, who is your customer, the business model questions that I spoke about, and really, you're coming up with a sales forecast, which is the underpinning of your financial projections. If you're going for the other type of model, where you've got a number of employees, you're most likely going to have an office. You're going to be looking at different types of customers and the services that you're providing. That would deserve a longer business plan and a more detailed one, particularly with financial projections. Because your commitment is so much longer.
Thanks, Sandy. How does a business plan vary between a corporation and a not-for-profit?
They are similar but different. I think the main difference with running a not-for-profit is that you often end up with 2 groups of customers. And so one thing I did 25 years ago was I ended up, my kids started playing Little League Baseball. And next thing you know, a few years later, I'm president of this thing. And I've got 800 kids and 54 teams. And by the way, it was one of the most wonderful experiences of my life. I get a lot of pleasure out of helping people and of being a volunteer. But the business model that we had in that Little League was we were basically selling our product at half our cost and making up the difference with donations. And so, for example, if our registration fee was $40 for a child, and we had, and the average cost per child that we needed for all of the materials and services and umpires and everything else was $80, then we'd have to find a bridge. So we ended up with 2 groups of customers there. So we have one group, which were obviously the recipients of our services. In this case, our neighborhood children. So we had one marketing plan to reach out to them and to register them and so on. We had a second customer group, which was our donors. And we had a whole program in place to go out to the local pizza stores and beat them up for a $500 donation, in which case we'd put their name on the back of the T-shirts that we would give to the teams. We'd name teams after their pizza store or whatever the business was, and thank them with banners hung on the fence. So you can see we had two customer groups, two main sources of income. The other big difference, maybe if Jerry is interested in opining on this, there are tax consequences of a not-for-profit. There's things you can and cannot do in running a not-for-profit that you cannot do. You can do with a for-profit. So, Jerry, you want to give some thoughts on that?
Well, thank you, Sandy. In my view, a nonprofit is an organization whose mission is to try to help others. And in your case with the Little League, it's a fun way to help others. But normally it's the mission of a nonprofit is to provide help. And more than likely, the majority of the money has to go to the party that's receiving the help. Whereas a regular corporation, you're in for profit and sales, but you can distribute your money to yourself or to your retirement plan, and you have a little more flexibility with the issue of sources of dollars.
Thanks so much.
Thanks,
Our next question is, how do you gauge your market potential besides just talking to clients? Are there any periodicals that go to, projecting market size? Are there any other resources?
There's no simple answer to this question. Let's be honest about it. It's a question of, again, back to an earlier comment I made. I think, one issue is to split out your addressable market versus the overall market. And again, let's just go back to an example, the laundromat that I was talking about. So what's the addressable market for that laundromat? Well, hopefully people will be coming on foot and perhaps by car from a few miles away. If it's a pedestrian, mostly a zone, then it's going to be a few blocks away. So how many people actually live in that area? And you can get that information from census information. So now we're beginning to focus in on what your addressable market is. And all right, then it's a question of what sort of market share could you get of that market. So that's a simple example. Trying to think of another example. Yeah, anyway, so
Sandy, if I could step in.
yeah, please.
I was going to say the difficulty of the question is what type of business are you talking about? For example, if it's regional, is it global? And the dilemma with each question is you have to grow to that stage, because along with that comes the operational side. You have to be able to service it. You have to be able to satisfy. And so the difficulty of the question is you have to do your own research. And I know Sandy believes in this as I do. All of our libraries around the country are paying for software to enable you to find out what is your market, how and big, or which direction do you want to take it. And these services are free to you in our library system, in addition to SCORE. But the point is, that a lot of this software that you want to get into requires a license, and the library pays for the license and enables you to access this data.
Thanks.
Okay.
What are your thoughts on outsourcing the production of a business plan? Are there resources available? What are your thoughts? Is it a good idea? Is it a bad idea?
I'm chuckling also.
Yeah, no, I'm generally against it. I find that the people, when you've read a number of business plans, immediately one which has been written for someone versus the author actually writing it themselves. And so look, a business plan has to have credibility, and it has to be real. I think the second issue is that if you've not written it yourself, you won't know, so let's say you're sitting down with a bank manager and asking for a loan, and you get asked a very basic question, which is in your, a question based upon what you have apparently written in your business plan, and you did not write it. So you can't answer the question because you don't know the background. So I'm a strong believer in writing it yourself. I think it's probably one of the most important documents you will write in your life. It deserves your personal commitment, and as I say, keep it short, sweet, and to the point.
Sandy, I'd like to add to that. I completely agree with you if you're going to have your own business, your own corporation. However, I have seen in nonprofits where you do hire a professional to do a grant for you, and in effect, a grant is a business plan. And all of a sudden, that professional can present it in a much more finessed way than you could. So there is exceptions.
Thanks. I'm going to follow up on that question. So there are also these business plan apps that promise that they will create a business plan for you. Do you have any thoughts on apps?
Again, I am deeply suspicious. I don't see how an app could have the voice of the customer come into it. And by the way, when I talk about the voice of the customer, I don't mean a survey. I think it's so often in these early stages, and the majority of folks attending this webinar at the earlier stage of starting the business, what's so important is to talk to people, because you can't really predict where the conversation is going to go. And you're really following threads in the conversation. You're and someone, someone may well say, well, have you thought about doing it this way, or offering this service versus the one that you are talking about? Or if you're testing your pricing with someone, you may well find, for example, resistance to a subscription model, but they may be open to an alternative approach, which you can discuss with them. You won't get that through an app or a survey, that comes out of a one-on-one conversation. And that's really what I look for in those early customer interaction interviews. Again, Jerry, if you do you have any thoughts on
I was going to completely agree with you. In my view, an app cannot anticipate the variance of your business. How will your business be different than your neighbor down the street? So that's, in my view, right away, these automatic apps are limiting versus enabling you to become unique.
Thanks. We had a number of questions related to service businesses as opposed to products. How would you recommend reaching out to potential customers for marketing research, since you can't show them samples or show a prototype? So what would you do what are your recommendations for a service business as opposed to a product business with business plans?
Yeah, I think this depends upon which type of service business. I think, a common business model we see at SCORE is a consulting business. And I think so much of that comes down to your prior experience. So again, go back to that digital marketing business. What prior experience do you have in digital marketing? What is your background in developing websites, for example? Can you show some examples? Can you get any testimonials, which are really critical in your marketing plan? Again, Jerry, I just reach out to your thoughts.
The dilemma with a lot of these questions is the exceptions to the rule. And so in my view, your idea of testimonials is point on. It's right to your business. And that to me is the first step, because from there, you can go to referrals. From there, you can go into associates or nearby businesses. You have a portfolio ready to help you. And then you can always build, I call it the reverse of a pyramid. In other words, your concept is the broad base of the pyramid, but to get to the final result is the peak. Reverse that period and say, wait a minute, my result is because this person raved about my product. This person was telling me that I should even enhance it. There's where I think where I'm going is word of mouth.
Yeah, let me just again speak to an example. This is an actual client we're working with right now, and she's had this successful wedding photography business for the last 10 years. Her website is spectacular. The pictures she takes are spectacular. The testimonials are spectacular. And along comes Mr. COVID. And so people are getting legally married, but they're not having the big parties where that was her customer base. So we've been working with her to do cash flow plans, etc. But again, you just look at the testimonials and you can see samples of the work and the testimonials, which are such an important part of her portfolio to support her. And she's become well known, and so word of mouth marketing has become very, very effective. She also works with some of the wedding events companies, which coordinate the whole thing and bring her in as a photographer.
Thanks.
Sandy, you mentioned a story from SCORE, but we've had a photographer come in with a payroll of 14 other photographers and how to meet that payroll. And it turns out that 4 of the photographers are specialists in the use of cameras through the space and using all of the, using their digital cameras with robots and flying over areas. And therefore, all of a sudden, they'd opened up an area of, what about common disasters? Usually when you file a claim of the damage to your property, the adjuster or the underwriter wants to see in the big picture what's the damage. And so all of a sudden, you take your camera, put it into and in the air and take an overview of it. And lo and behold, that opened up an entire area for them just to go in, and they travel around America solving that problem.
Yeah.
Thanks. So our next question is, would a business plan need financials if you're not looking for outside funding?
I think the answer is yes. I think the exceptions are a very simple model, and the simple exception will be, for example, a solo consulting business where you are the sole employee, and there you probably want a sales plan. But I think in so many cases, I find, so again, I've got one client who is selling prints online of her artwork, do financial projections, and I suppose the honest answer is she's had difficulty dealing with some of the spreadsheets involved. And my concern is that she's essentially flying blind, without having the financial projections. We don't know if she's making money or not making money. It may be good, it may not be good. But this is an example where financial projections, certainly if I was running that business, it would help me sleep at night, to know that I'm headed towards a profitable direction. Secondly, the business plan would result in, for example, a monthly sales forecast. Sales forecast and bottom line, earnings and profit from the business. So now what I can do is I can sit down at the end of every month and say, well, I thought I was going to do this. What am I actually doing? And am I actually making the money? And you can see if problems are appearing, you can see the problems appearing in the numbers before they become a disaster. Again,
Thanks.
Jerry, I'm sure you have thoughts on this.
I want to sneak in another question, so I'm going to.
I was going to suggest that maybe it's time for my section, because we're going to be answering questions without letting me show.
I have one more question for Sandy before we move on.
Okay.
You spoke about how you validate a concept. Can you talk a little bit more about how you validate that business concept? Maybe give an example.
Yeah, I mean, another example would be, and again, this was a real client situation. I had a client wanting to develop an app to help restaurants market themselves. This was about 7 years ago, and it may have changed some since then. But at the time, I thought, oh, okay, look, he's going to sell a service to restaurant owners to better communicate and grab the information from clients, with their consent, obviously. so that he could build out a client list of customers. He could engage them in, for example, having on Tuesday night, we have a special program or whatever it is, and it could be music or it could be special food or whatever. Anyway, so my recommendation was go out, talk to your customer, go talk to some restaurant owners and test your idea. And what came back was really quite surprising, because he came back having received a yawn. The restaurant owners, at least the ones he spoke with, really were not ready for his type of service. And I've seen this with some of my, I've got a wonderful Italian restaurant just around the corner. And he knows me and I know him, and we shake hands, or we used to anyway. And the business model is one of open the doors and watch the people come in. Obviously you can make reservations directly with the restaurant or via open table, but there's no proactive marketing out to the customers. He doesn't know who his customer is, except when they walk in his door. And I see this as a missed opportunity. But anyway, so my SCORE client decided this, the market was not ready for this and moved on to something else. But it was that interaction with his customers that made his decision in this direction. So
thanks. Thanks, Sandy. Thank you all for your questions. We're going to hold on to them. We will have an extended Q&A at the end of the webinar. So we will hold on to them and come back to them. With that, thank you so much, Sandy. And we're going to move on to Jerry's section, which will talk about business plans and financials. So Jerry, if you'd please introduce yourself.
Thank you. Thank you very much. And thank you, Sandy. I was going to say that I'm 4 years now with SCORE, and my skill is that I've had my own business for over 25 years. And I am knowledgeable in financial services, which means I'm very aware of investments, insurances, tax deferrals, tax qualified plans. So my section is going to deal with a different language called mathematics and accounting. And basically we're using a sample of a dog walker in New York City here. Next, Sandy. And basically what we're going to try to teach today, or the learning goals, and they want to, thank you, is we're going to use a simple business model, and we'll try to do a sales projection with the tracking of expenses, a profit and loss statement, which is considered boring information, managing changes to your forecast, and the importance of keeping records. But we're going to show you how these records satisfy the perspective of the lender. And then, of course, where do you go for additional support? Now, we named this case Johnny Walker's dog walking business. And the whole point of it is to be compassionate and offer spirit. But the goal was to make $50,000 a year income. And the elevator speech, when asked, what is your business, is a 2-minute answer. I have a dog walking business on the Upper West Side, and I want to walk dogs around for their exercise. And who's the customers? The customers are obviously dog owners and the Upper West Side of New York City, which is where we're located. And how they provide the service is that they try to walk 5 dogs per leader for 1 hour. Every person takes 5 dogs and walks them for 1 hour. And then our business is we would share pictures or videos to show the owner where the dog went or what happened during the walk. So in this example, there's quite a few, much competition in New York for this. So why am I better? Well, the easiest answer to start with is testimonials, and put them onto the website, and then your experience. And then of course, the dogs that are fit in the group. We want nobody to be continuously snarling at each other. And then the bigger question is, how do you reach the customer? And an easy way to do it in New York is to put notices on the buildings. We call them notice boards, or even in restaurants or in the food stores. There are signs for dog signs, for advertising signs, I should say. And then plus visit dog walking locations. In other words, in a lot of the parks in New York City, there is a border area with a fence where dogs are allowed to run without a leash. So talking to owners there is then these dog runs is a very specific way of meeting your prospects. And then the website with testimonials and pictures. And then of course, Google, people can Google the business. Now, we assumed that it's a service business. So there's no overhead, no costs to make the sale. And we assume you're going to work out of the home because it's, again, low overhead, but you do need insurance. You are going to create a website to promote your business. And then you're going to spend money for prospecting or / sales marketing. And in this assumption, we started here with a historic perspective. The first column to your left, FY, stands for fiscal year. And we started in fiscal year 18. And there, one dog was walked at the hour of 2 p.m. in the afternoon. And the dog walker earned $20. And doing that every day of the year, 365 days, means the income in would be $7,300. You walk another dog at 3 p.m. for $20, again, 365 days, but the total income for the year would be $14,600. And then in fiscal year 19, there were 3 dogs at 2 p.m. So there was a total of $60. And we figured maybe 200 days because of vacation days and everything, that earned 12. And then 2 dogs at 3 p.m. is $40 at every day of the year. 365 is $14,600. And then 5 dogs at 9 p.m., which is expanding the business. That was $100 for that session. And there's 28 days because usually it's on vacations you step in. And the total income for fiscal year 19 is $29,400. So now we go into last year, fiscal year 20. I'm in my far left column. Walked 4 dogs at 7 a.m. So we expanded the day now. $80 for that session, 365 days, $29,200. And so you get a total income of $68,500. So now we put this into a profit loss. And we look at the historic perspective, fiscal year 18, service income was $14,600. The expenses between your telecommunications and your marketing, your internet, $1,188. Your utilities, which is your electricity, $1,200, that's $100 a month. Total overhead was $2,388. You subtract that from your $14,600, which is the very top line, and you get earnings before taxes. We all have a partner. It's called the New York State, New York City, and federal government. They all want their taxes. We're assuming here 21%. So the net earnings, you subtract tax after expenses, in net earnings is $9,648. So we go to the following year, in fiscal year 19, and we projected $29,004. The expenses increased to $6,008. The insurance, we had to get insurance, is $498. The electricity stayed the same. Total overhead, though, is $8,521. You subtract this from the top line, $29,400, and you get $20,000 left over, subject to tax, 21%, $4,000 taxes, and net earnings is $16,494, which is approximately 80% increase in earnings. Now we go to the forecast period, where in last year, fiscal year 20, forecasting $68,500. Obviously, we're going to expend more in marketing, and the insurance stayed the same, utility stayed the same. Our overhead then went up $10,009. So the overhead increased by about 25%, but the earnings after those expenses, so subtract 10,000 from 68,000, is 57,000, 21% tax of 12,000, and you take home $45,428. That's the net earnings. Here I'd like to pause because everybody asks me, one of the beauties of my own business is I don't answer to anyone but myself. I have sad news for you. You have a partner, whether you want it to acknowledge it or not. It's called taxes. Every April 15th, you have to file taxes. That's reality. You file your personal income tax return every April 15th. That's a Form 1040. Well, the business has to, if you incorporate, it also has to file a tax return. If it's a regular C or S corporation, that's called a Form 1120. If it's an LLC corporation, that's a K1, which is added to your 1040. But taxes are due. And because of that, That's why your accountant wants a profit and loss. That's why your accountant wants a balance sheet, because on the tax return itself, you are basically doing that when you do your taxes April 15th. A Schedule C, which is a sole proprietor, basically, to your regular tax return. Line 1, what did you earn gross? Line 8 through line 27, what are your expenses? And then line 30, what's your profit? Did you have a loss? So you're doing it for the government. You might as well do it for yourself and have it organized, but you have to show your revenue and sales, what are your expenses, and then what do you keep after all those expenses? Now, this slide is the curveball that we all saw last year. In March 2020, I don't think anyone anticipated the COVID. And therefore, all of a sudden, we had to stop work and the wall dropped. And therefore, you had to adapt, or as we now say, pivot, because everybody went into quarantine. Next. And so what happened is we have to start making our assumptions. We have to alter our assumptions. So remember, in fiscal year 20, we anticipated $68,500 of income. After COVID, we changed the second column from the right. Instead of walking dogs 365 days a year, we lost April, May, and June because of quarantine. So therefore, only 275 days are available. So no matter what you earn for that hour, you're only going to make 22,000. And at 3 o'clock, you see, you're only going to work 275 days at best. So all of a sudden, total income dropped down to 50,000. So going back on the historic period, top line 14.6, after tax, very bottom line, you walked away with 9,006. Go back to the fiscal year 19, top line 29,004, which is your income, less expenses, after tax is 16,004. Then we go to the forecast period of fiscal year 20. We anticipated 68,500. We anticipated paying taxes of 12. We anticipated earning $45,000, which is more than doubled our income. But COVID steps in and whoa, we had to change everything. So instead of making 68, we only made, we think 50,900. So therefore we changed our telecom and marketing, reduced that and brought it down to 8,200 so that our expenses reduced from 10 to 9 and therefore our income reduced from 45 to 32. So with COVID, you have to make it, that makes you realize nobody anticipated COVID, so you have to always be prepared for the changes in life which come out of left field. So you have to be careful. You want to cut your costs. The easiest is marketing, which ironically, you have to maybe even double down. And when you are able to go back to work, spend more to catch up for the period when you couldn't. But there are other things to do that. In this case, you supplement your income, sell additional products, sell dog raincoats, sell dog booties. And then no matter what, you are required to have good records, whether for your accountant, for your banker, for yourself, for your investor. You have to always be anticipating that what's going to be the tax and what's going to have to be provided, because the PPP loans needed data to get the PPP loans. It's time for a poll. Are you seeking financial assistance? A yes, a no, or a don't know? I'll pause.
We've got lots of replies coming in, so we're going to go ahead and give it just a moment. We've still got lots of poll responses coming in, so we're going to give it just a little bit longer, and then I'm going to go ahead and get your responses in. Okay, and I'm going to close that poll and share those results.
So 45% are seeking external funding, 36% are not, and 19% don't know yet. Well, I was going to say one of the criteria, what lenders look for, or any investor, there are 6 C's in my view. First of all, how much of your own capital are you putting at risk? Usually they want to see if you put in at least 25%, if not more, of your own money. And then on credit ratings, in my view, anything you have to have over 600 to be at least acceptable in going for others' money. Your capacity, do you have other people working for you? By the way, this dog walker had 120 people walking dogs for her. Collateral, can you guarantee the loan? What do you have in other assets? Do you have a 401k? Do you have a house? Character, your credibility, which is basically you made the appointment with the banker, or you made the appointment, show up. Prove credibility. Competition. Why are you better? Which answers the other question we had earlier. That's why I don't think these automated apps work, because you in compete. This world's very competitive out there. You have to be unique. So know your business, and you have to project and forecast. You do your best. You assume a lot because, again, nobody saw COVID. You monitor it. And that's why we have a financial plate where we project every month of the year. What do you anticipate in income? Then the middle sections, what do you anticipate in expenses? And then we have the bottom, which is what before tax, after tax. And you have to continuously monitor it. And nowadays with these Excel, it's simple to do. You adjust and you align. Again, we call it pivoting in this current marketplace. Or like Sandy said, you go with the plan A and a plan B. Remember the young men, the children, the college kids that wanted to go either to the golf course or to the farmer. And you realize, again, financial statements are critical. They're always going to be asked, and you might as well face up to it. You have to do it. So in SCORE, although we help each other and help you, we participate together as teams. You can get templates from us. You can acquire through our library and through our webinars also templates. It's just by going to score.org. You search for the financial template, and you can find business plans or financial plans. Then, of course, we have an extensive library of free webinars.
Jerry, can I just
Yes.
add to this? I mean, look, the financial template. So this is actually one of SCORE's most popular downloads. And I've used it now with dozens of clients. And it helps particularly with clients who they do not know their financial future. And by working through this thing, suddenly they see their financial future. And once you have a reasonable best guess, now as one model, now you can save it as version A. Now you can save it also and play out a version B, which might be a more optimistic one, or in a version C, which might be a more pessimistic one, and make sure that you've got the cash to survive something like COVID. The financial template was, I believe, developed by SCORE in Seattle in conjunction with a company you may have heard about called Microsoft. It runs in Excel and makes really good use of Excel, and it links together a series of worksheets that you fill out sheet by sheet and build out your business plan. The other thing is the extensive library of free webinars. SCORE now has probably several thousand really good webinars you can watch at home on a whole variety of topics. So this is a very frequent resource that I refer my clients to. Go to score.org and go to these two areas and benefit from all of the stuff which is available at no charge. Thank you.
Thanks so much. With that, we're going to dive in and take some of your questions. Our first question is, why have profit and loss and a balance sheet?
Well, that's almost equivalent to asking why have apples and have oranges. A balance sheet is a picture of your business one day in the year. And that's why it's always dated December 31. It takes a photo of where you are at that time. How much cash do you have? How much do you owe? And what happened? Did you earn? And then you can measure that one day to the following year, one day, December 31, 22. So the balance sheet is a photo, financial photo of your business. A profit and loss is an ongoing page, which is usually done quarterly. And because it's done quarterly is because you have to do quarterly reporting to the government for various returns. Like here in New York, it's a New York State 45, and the federal government's a 940, 941. So you have to supplant information, mathematical information, to arrive at numbers that are required by the various government agencies.
Great, thank you. So is it wise to break down / estimate your financials and cost control prior to starting your business?
Oh, in my view, no doubt about it. You always want to try to lay a parameter. An outline at least enables you to see if, one, you're on time, two, if you're focused, three, if you've met some goals. Because you meet any one of your goals, that's an achievement. Starting out any business, there are so many unknowns. I call them hurdles, which you never even anticipated. I just mentioned a state tax return. What about the sales tax return? I mean, I can go on and on about the various reports that you must do every 90 days.
Yeah, Jerry, if I can just add to that, I think I've moved with some of my clients, so now they're in business, and we actually set up and I think I mentioned this before, a quarterly review to go over their financial statements, and particularly to see how their sales are doing against their original plan. And I find this, it's I think a helpful extension of our services, and I know our clients are particularly pleased with it.
Thanks. Our next question is, so we're getting this question a lot, so I'm going to just answer it again. A lot of people are saying, are there business plan templates? Are they available from SCORE? So again, that's going to be at www.score.org. But there was also a question related to, would it be the same for an established business as a startup?
Sandy?
Oh, I mean, the answer is there's a yes and no there. The difference with look, I mean, so many of our businesses, the answer is obviously it depends, and that's what we find. This is where mentoring comes in, and what we would best. And I think with an existing business, look, you have the whole history. I had one client once who was planning to buy a 30-year-old optometrist store. So we have 30 years of tax records to show the history of the store and its performance, which was a wonderful foundation for the backbone to his business plan. And what he planned to do was to obviously buy it, take it over, and then change some of its management structures and basically make it more profitable. So he had an existing business that he could talk about in the business plan, but also what he could talk about was what he wanted to do to grow it. By the way, I want to go back to one of Jerry's slides and just re-emphasize what we ran into with this particular client was that he wanted a loan of, in his funding requirement was I think 800,000 to buy the store out from the existing owner. So the loan request from the local bank, who were actually interested in doing it, was 600,000. So this was at a commercial loan rate. The catch was that the bank wanted 25% of that 800,000 to come from the new owner, and the new owner did not have that 200,000. So this is an issue I now bring up with my clients up front to make sure they realize this. Look, if you're not willing to invest your own money in the business you're planning to get into, why should another investor?
Sandy, I was going to share one of my score stories.
I want us to take another question, so I'm gonna. So we appreciate the stories, but we have to move on, get as many questions as we can. Would you recommend having 3 financial projections, good, better, best? And which would you show if you're seeking external funding?
Ooh.
Well, the more information you show, the easier it is to get money, because any sophisticated investor realizes there are things beyond their control. And so I would show all the data. And it'll facilitate them understanding what you're going through to get your business going. So I would not hold anything. I would not hold anything back.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's also a question, if you've got a fairly detailed business plan, the question is, how do you present it? Some businesses lend themselves to different levels of presentation. So for example, I mean, there could well be 4 different levels. I mean, there could be something as basic as what we call an elevator speech, which is literally 3 lines of text. And someone says, what are you planning to do? And you have the answer right there. And then, having said your 3 lines of text, hopefully what you will hear is the response, do tell me more. But you've caught the person and they've got what you're trying to do very quickly in those 3 lines of text. And then you may have an executive summary. You may have a pitch deck, which is usually about 10 PowerPoint slides. And you speak to that. And then you may have a full business plan.
Thanks, Sandy.
And the financials generally, again, you can summarize in the executive summary, the summary of your top line, bottom line, year 1, year 2, year 3, and your funding requirements. That's generally what goes in the executive summary. And the goal here is to catch someone's interest, to get that answer, that response. Please tell me more.
Thanks, Sandy. You're on a roll, so we're going to send it back to you to talk about some of the more nitty-gritty of the business plan.
Okay, so we have some additional slides here, which I want to share with you. So I'm going to show these. I'm not planning to spend a lot of time on them, but this is a little more detail about what should go into an executive summary. And I mentioned about a 1-pager. So it's obviously an overview. It's your vision and short and long-term revenue goals. You generally want to have a summarized income statement. As I say, top line, bottom line, year 1, year 2, year 3. Your strategies for success. What are you asking for in terms of your financial requirements, especially any outside financing? And how do you plan to use those funds? And it needs to be, generally the way you do this, it appears up front, but you write it last. It's the last thing you get to after writing the full plan. And you need to be brief, clear, and to the point and persuasive. And this is basically your sales pitch. This is what could go on the title page of a business plan. And you can see business plan, your business name, business plan, it's called a business plan, name, address, and plan date. It's a date as of a point in time. I see plans as organic things. It will change. If you do a plan in 3 months' time, it will be a different plan because you will have learnt more. So there needs to be a date on it, your contact information, website, and how can you be contacted. Business description, business, your name, your own, the ownership of the business, legal structure, is it a LLC or subchapter S? And we'll get back to this a little bit more in a second. Mission and business objectives, introduction to your products and services, what licenses and permits may be needed. If you're getting into food and particularly alcohol, you are going to need permits. So we're going to have to face that up front. And the background or concept on which your business is based, basic introduction to your business. Management, ownership, and key associates. Now, what's the relevant background of yourself? Relevant means, relevant to what you plan to do. So back to my example with that laundromat. My client, does not have experience in running a laundromat. However, what she's done is she's assembled an advisory panel of 3 people. And I'm making this up as an example, but it's what you would need to do in that circumstance. But I have an advisory panel, which includes, my father, 30 years experience, and maybe a couple of other people to help you. And that's the way to bridge any gaps in experience that you may have. One other way, by the way, to get experience in the business that you plan to get into is to actually go work in it. So we've had a number of clients who have graduated, for example, from hairstyling school, and want to start their own hairstyling practice, but don't have any business experience. Well, one solution is to go work in a hairstyling salon and learn how employees are paid, learn how the business is run, so that we can circle back in 2 or 3 years and work with that client to set up their own business. You know, roles and responsibility of each person in managing the operating business. Another issue that comes up is partnerships. And again, it's very much an independent choice as to whether you work as a partner. And I've worked with consulting services, for example, and sometimes it's one person and they want to run the business themselves, and that's their choice. There could be other times where they say, you could split the consulting management into two main groups. You can split it into finding new business, AKA marketing or networking, and the other part of it is operations. So let's say you are going out there getting business for your digital marketing consulting business, and you're out there working with customers, and you have a back office, you have a team of employees and part-time, full-time employees and subcontractors who are helping you put together websites, you know, e-commerce platforms, you know, managing the results. Digital marketing, by the way, is a classic long-term relationship with the customer, because you may well set up an e-commerce business and their website, but then you'll be providing reports every month back to the owner as to how the business is doing. What are all the analytics doing for all of the different pieces of the puzzle? And you can help them review. It's a wonderful way to maintain the long-term relationship with the customer. Yeah, I mean, show why you and your associate are qualified to make this business a success. And if you don't know, if you know that you don't know, be honest about it, and include a plan to address it. People, and it comes back to that credibility question in the 6 C's. And this is one of the areas where credibility can be undermined, because if you get asked a question and you're trying to paper over a crack in something, then they'll find out and undermine your credibility. So operations, another key part of it. Some businesses, the operation side is critical in most businesses. So you want to talk about how will your business be managed and operated, where, key stages, phases of your operation. Let me just expand on that. I get many clients when they say, I actually have 3 ideas for my business. And I may well have, now the question is, what do they do with those 3 ideas? Are they in different market segments? Are they products that build on each other? So one way to structure the business could well be to say, and the plan could be to say, I'll start with one business area, get that going, get it stable, get it being in a positive cash flow mode. And then what I'll do is I'll then start the second one. So maybe at the beginning of the 2nd year, I'll add a second line of business, whatever that is. It could be a product line, it could be an additional service. And that way you stage the business. And of course, that gets reflected in your business plan. You know, you talk about in the 1st year, I'll do this. In the 2nd year, I'm going to add this. And there may be a different business model for that second part of the business. And then there could be a 3rd one in year 3. And then in the financials that show, you know, business year 1, we're doing this group of products or services. Year 2, we're adding more. So you see the sales forecast in year 2 build out that second business. It all flows and it's all logical to the reader. Back to the plan. I mean, is there any special equipment that you need? Expertise, facilities, permits, and so on. And also, look, with e-commerce, you know, what is your plan for that? And we're now, actually, we're very lucky to have quite a number of new mentors join us with backgrounds in this critical area. But again, what is your plan? And how do you plan to address it? Another part of it is what are the professional relationships? And you may want to identify an attorney. It doesn't mean you have to pay the attorney, but you may have an attorney identified and willing to be your attorney if needed. The same with your accountant, you know, an insurance broker. That I remember a wonderful client some years back, and he was an out of the work janitorial supervisor. He'd been laid off. He had young children at home. He was motivated to start a new business. And So, we talked about starting his business, and then I got him back about 3 months later. And I remember him sitting down and showing, I said, how's your business doing? And he showed me this deli order pad, one of these small flip, packs of receipts. And I started to read it, and it said cleaning windows in Starbucks, $200, cleaning office floors, ABC building, $300. And I just jumped up and shook his hand, because he managed to get this business going, from just using his bootstraps, and got it working. He got business in. And then I said, all right, have you, and I can see him, he's up a ladder inside Starbucks, cleaning windows next to Starbucks's customers. And I said, do you have liability insurance? And he said, no. Have you registered your business? No, because I'm smelling a real liability exposure with this business, which is controllable, but you do need to have an insurance plan in place. You may want to have other specialist consultants as needed. I often recommend some of my clients look for advisors and specialists on LinkedIn. And you may well be able to pay someone a consulting fee to have an hour of their time on the phone. And in that hour, you can get some real quality advice on a certain business, and you can assess them as to whether you want to continue to use them as an advisor. And obviously ourselves, as business mentors. And you may want to, please find yourself a local mentor. SCORE is broken up into 300 chapters across the country. You can find local mentors by going to score.org. You can find out local chapters. Local chapters may well have, for example, information on COVID funding, both national, obviously, but also local. And it's often this, I had a look at SCORE Boston and SCORE Chicago, and they have support resources for people in those areas. The business mentors locally may also know of local market situations and opportunities for you. So find yourself a business mentor. This is often what's called a one-page business plan. It's also called a business model canvas. And I gave you those 6 questions earlier on. This is a more complete one called a business model canvas. And it's another way of doing your business as a bullet point, fill in the boxes here. We're not going to go through it in detail now, but it's an alternative and a slightly more comprehensive version of the simple business model questions that I gave you earlier. This and the following slide came up in, it was actually the optometrist situation that I mentioned. And I remember a colleague, a fellow SCORE mentor, gave my client this list of questions. And I wanted to share it with you because it was a really good list. So this is a listing of what banks look for if you're going to do a loan application to a bank. And again, it's a lot of detail here, but so if you want to go back over this, I suggest you do a freeze frame and take down some of these notes here. But it goes in some detail. There's some of the questions that'll be going through the lender's mind in approving your application. And here is the second page. So, and generally you want 3 years of tax returns from the business you're planning to buy. Again, another story that comes to mind was looking at the tax returns for a hairdressing salon. One hairdresser, a really small salon, and the tax returns had like $25,000 of revenue per year. Couldn't really believe that number, but here it is in the tax return. But the previous owner was working alone, and we know how the payment was being made. It wasn't obviously not being reported anyway. So, but anyway, have a look at what you can do. And in that situation, it will be difficult to get a loan against unreported income. These issues come up all the time about pricing. So look, here is the theory. So you do your marketing strategy, you know, what are your industry norms, current conditions, what's your competitive pricing, your cost structure, your costs and margins on your product, your positioning. All right, so, and here are some simple answers to some additional strategies on, and I used a lot of these when introducing medical devices, but actually these strategies are applicable really across the board. And you can, so for example, you've got the puzzle of how do I price a new product or service? So you can start with an introductory price with an end date for the introductory price. And that way you have the option to assess the market reaction to the product or service. And you have an out if you need to raise the price. So let's say your thinking is, I'm going to put this service in at this price, and then you realize you've actually underpriced it. You could get more. Well, now you could say, well, it's come to let's say the end of April. This promotion was just an introductory promotion. It is over. My new price is this. This is the list price. Second issue is create a new version of the product to align with the new price. And of course, we know an industry that's been doing this ever since it was invented. It's called the car industry. And they're really good at just changing a product in a minor way. It's a different stock number, it's a different item, and it's at a different price. So you can use that technique as well. A third option is offer different versions of your product or service. You actually heard an example of this with my golf ball recoverer. And he graded the balls into high, medium, and low quality. So you could apply this. You see this in the service industry as well. You see it in the legal profession. So you can retain a lawyer and pay one price. You can retain a partner and pay a higher price, or you can retain a paralegal and pay a lower price. So you can cover a broader range of needs. We see this in the airline industry as well now. They are unbundling their pricing. So now you may well end up paying piecemeal for the different services you want on the plane. And another issue that comes up is equating price with quality. And this, for example, jewelry. So I remember one client walking in and she had some beautiful silver earrings, but pricing them at just $25 a pair. And I said, well, why don't you price them at $75? Because that now gives the customer the perception of a much better quality. You now have the room to do a Valentine's Day discount down to say, $59.95, and still have tons of room, a margin in there. So again, this cosmetics is another area where this applies, and it applies in other market areas as well. All right, so we're back to questions here.
Yes, back to questions. This came up a fair amount. Could you go into more detail on LLC corporations versus C or S corporations? People are looking to figure out the best legal structure for their business.
Sandy, I'll start with that one if you don't mind.
Please.
The difference between a C corporation and an S corporation is primarily one item. You can only have 5 stockholders in an S corporation. In a C corporation, you can have as many as you wish, or any number of investors and everything. So that's the primary difference. Either one are the same, which is it protects you from liability. Both of them have to file a Form 1120 tax return every April. But other than the issue of stockholders, there's really no difference. An LLC is a pass-through corporation and basically gives you a K-1 every year to be added to your April 15th personal tax return, your own 1040. You add the K-1, which you need an accountant or a CPA to do that K-1. And he needs your profit and loss or your balance sheet so he can do it. But those are the primary differences. Although I would add one more, which I've learned being at SCORE. I never knew that the major media companies will not pay invoices to LLCs. So all of these production companies out there are not, if they want to get paid, should not be an LLC. And the only advantage of an LLC at that point is strictly liability. So if you're not going to deal with a major corporation that's going to have that wall to your invoice, it's no big deal. But otherwise, we always recommend C corporations or S corporations. But Sandy.
Thanks. I'm just going to quick add that we are going to be offering another one of these Spectrum Score webinars on May 10th, and we will have an accounting professional there who will talk about the tax implications of the various legal structures. So look for that. I'm putting in chat the URL where you can register for that. That link will also go out in the follow-up materials with the webinar recording. So that you can find that link there to register for that webinar, as well as the rest of the series that we're offering. Our next question is, what are the pros and cons of hiring a subcontractor?
Sandy, can I start with that one?
Yeah, please.
Okay, the positives of hiring a subcontractor is that specialty. We have a lot of movies done here in New York, so you bring in a producer or you bring in a lighting expert. Those are basically the subcontractors. The negative of a subcontractor is you have just delegated work back to yourself. I have one of my clients came in to score, had 52 1099s due in January. You know how hard it is to get the address for 52 people, get the social security number for 52 people, to get the amount of money they earned from you for 52. It was horrendous. So in my view, it does not facilitate your time to do a subcontractor from their perspective, maybe, but not from your time. And they're, go ahead, Sandy.
You know, that's interesting. I think that's an interesting perspective. I was thinking really of, you know, for example, of someone who's actually a builder, you know, building, you know, an independent builder, building houses, and you bring the plumber in on a 1099 basis, a subcontractor, and you only pay for the plumber for when you need that person during that phase of the project. So that can be really beneficial in terms of having a full-time plumber on staff, where you may not have the work available for them all year round. And again, it's one of those it depends situations. Having a full-time employee may well be better at times, you know, because you have not only their commitment, but I mean, you know, you're really committing to each other in some ways to work together and manage the business together. I worked both on a full-time basis with companies, and I worked on a subcontract basis with some, and you know, as an employee, I'm treated obviously with respect, because I know what I'm doing and I'm committed to the business. The subcontractor is sort of considered something of an outsider. But again, I think it fits depending on the type of service that you're bringing in. I think the building model is a good one, where you can just bring people in as you need them to do a defined job. So.
Sandy, if I can build on what you just said, you mentioned a good word, commitment. One of the advantages of being an employee or hiring employees, because if I had a complaint about a lot of the business plans that we see, the business plans that we see don't include the person who created the job to pay themselves. Treating themselves as an employee means that they're in business to make a living. And then when they hire others, they're in business to give them an opportunity to have a living. So the advantage, in my view, of having a W-2 employee is that, one, you hire others, you're giving them certainty, and two, you're making yourself treated as an employee of that business, and you're forcing yourself to take a salary out, because every year at the year end, if you only have a profit of 14 to 15,000, did you have income in between that number? Because if you didn't, you shortchanged yourself for all the work you put in.
Yeah, one additional input on this. There's two ways to pay an outside employee. You can pay them by period of time, by hour, by day, or whatever it is, or you can have a scope of work and agree on what the work might be. I personally prefer the scope of work, because then the expectations are very clear on both sides. You do this work, it's this project, and you get paid this much.
Thanks. We got a number of questions around funding sources. So what funding sources are available for small businesses?
Sandy, can I start?
Yeah, please.
In my view, if I were to go a list, A is yourself, because that means you believe in yourself. B, next would be your family. Go to your brothers and your sisters, your cousins, your aunts and uncles. C would then be go to friends or to even associates, because they say, geez, I like that idea. And you can tell them, well, in fact, there's quite a few businesses in New York which do that, by the way. They say, look, loan me $1,000. I will give you 10% in 1 year. And you go to 50 people, all of a sudden you got $50,000, knowing that you got to pay $5,000 come the year later. So going to friends and asking it as a loan, which, by the way, write it out, commit, make it a term loan. If you gave it today, April 23rd, next year, April 23rd, you will pay interest on it, and you will maybe return it in 2 years or 5 years. You can even say, provided I have so much sales, or provided my business. But those are the other ways. Because the other more formal ways is obviously the bank and but don't forget, now why I'm hesitating now is the issue of government grants. They're ideal, but they are so difficult to fill out and acquire because you're competing against everybody in America. So your grant isn't, a request for the grant isn't the only one. It could be 10,000 people asking for that piece of that grant. So those are very complex, whether it be in a nonprofit corporation or even in your corporation because of a favored skill that you're bringing in. The word I would add there is it's complex to get government grants.
Yeah. Jerry, let's just add in crowdfunding, which is another growing source of funding. And again,
Sandy, can I just insert one thing?
Yeah.
As of last quarter, last year, 2020, all that funding is now considered ordinary income tax. And income tax has to be paid the following April 15th on that crowdfunding. I'm sorry.
Okay. Okay. Crowdfunding can be a solution when you are selling a product. You're essentially advance selling the product. And I had one client who was creating, he was calling it a clock, and it had one hand, and the hand went round one time per year. So it's not really a clock, it's a conversation starter, it's a wall decoration item. But he was actually able to raise enough for his first build of product, which got him in business. And it worked partly because they couldn't get this device from anybody else. It was a very unique design. And they were willing to wait 6 months, 12 months for delivery of it, pay up front and get this unique product back. And it got him in business.
Thanks, Sandy. Thanks, Jerry. So at this point, we're going to go ahead and give you a quick poll. Are you already working with a SCORE mentor? And go ahead and submit your answers. We'll give it just a little bit longer because we've got lots of responses coming in. Okay, I am now going to go ahead and close out that poll, and I'm going to share those results. So 33% of you are working with SCORE Mentor, which is great, and 67% are not. So what I'm going to tell you is that if you still have questions or you had a very detailed question and we weren't able to answer it specifically today, get a SCORE Mentor. They're a great resource to help you to develop your business plan, flesh out your business plan, and not even just business plans. We can help you throughout the life of your business, and our services are 100% free. And we tackle with you the specific challenges and the needs of your business. Those are one-on-one conversations that you have with the mentor. Great resource to help small businesses thrive. And our URL is www.score.org. This is a screenshot of that page, and I've highlighted where you can find a mentor. So just click at that Find a Mentor in the upper left corner, and that will prompt you to enter your zip code, and then it will direct you to a mentor close by to you. Following the webinar, we are going to send you the webinar recording that will go out in the next day. So you will have complete access to all the content that was covered today. So look for that webinar recording tomorrow in the follow-up materials. We're also sending you in that same email an evaluation survey. Please just take a moment to fill it out. It lets us know what was effective about today's webinar and what we could do to improve it for future webinars. This is actually the first webinar we're offering in partnership with Spectrum. So your feedback really is very, very valuable to let us know, was this effective? Did this help you? And what any thoughts that you have. So please take a moment, fill out that evaluation. Again, it's in the follow-up materials with the webinar recording that will be sent out tomorrow. With that, I just want to say thank you to Sandy, thank you to Jerry, and thank you so much for all of you for joining us today. We hope you enjoy the rest of your day. Bye, all.
All right. Thanks, everybody. Take care.